This is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with your host, Vicki Davis.
Today's show is sponsored by EF Explore America and the STEM Tours to show your students how STEM impacts the world up close and in action. Go to efexploreamerica.com/STEM and stay tuned at the end of the show to learn more. Today we're talking with Angela Cannava. She's a high school science and career and technical education teacher in Denver. She's been doing that for 19 years. She has established the CTE Biomedical Sciences pathway and serves as advisor for HOSA, Future Health Professionals. For the last 5 years, she's been taking her students beyond the classroom walls and leading international tours, including a health sciences trip to Great Britain and a Ridge to Reef expedition in Belize. We're talking about how student travel transforms learning and your experiences, Angela. Why don't you start with your first trip?
My first travel experience was students with EF tours in Great Britain. The reason I decided to take kids to travel in the first place is because I had actually gone on a tour with EF with one of my friends, Brian Jenkins, the year before. And when I was on that tour with him, I saw how much students' eyes were open when they were traveling and how you could build different relationships with them and see them on a different level and get to know them on what their true interests are. That's what sparked me to want to lead the Health Sciences in Great Britain tour with EF Tours. I was very nervous leading my first trip. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm taking kids all the way overseas. But EF did a great job with helping ease my anxiety and my worry. I had chaperones with me. I had support. I had a tour director that met us right at the airport. And as soon as we got off that plane, the kids, you could just tell how excited they were because some of the kids that I took had never left Denver before. This was an absolutely amazing experience for them to actually get to be in a different country. But that trip was absolutely incredible. We had an amazing tour director. And one thing that EF does that's amazing is they have all local tour directors. So they know the area really, really well. An outstanding chaperone team, which for any teacher that's thinking about traveling, that's a very important thing to consider when you're doing your pre-planning is who your chaperone team will be. You want a nice, diverse chaperone team where all the students will have a relationship with at least one of those chaperones. That's just a little side note, but we got to see so many cool things in both Scotland and England. A part about the tours was the trip was aligned to the curriculum I'm teaching. One of the highlights was we went to this forensics lab and we got to do real DNA fingerprinting, look at fingerprint analysis. This was a real lab in a different country. The kids got to see it from a different perspective too, which was so interesting. And one of the students that necessarily wasn't the most excited to be in class sometimes, I just remember him coming up to me after doing the whole forensics workshop and being like, oh my God, Miss Cannava, everything you taught me is actually what they do in the real lab. This is so cool. We did everything from health science related things, these anatomical museums and seeing anatomical artifacts, brains that were preserved, different artifacts that have been collected from years ago, a lot of the old paintings that were done of anatomy, some of the first anatomical paintings that were done. That hooked really nicely also into the anatomy class that I teach. But beyond the learning part, we went on the London Eye and it was like sunset. And I have this picture of these students just looking out across the skyway, all smiles. And I've never seen such happy kids in my life. It was a really good mix of getting to see really good sights plus the learning. Key for any teacher wanting to take students on a trip is just number one, knowing that you can definitely do it if you build strong relationships with students. They will want to travel with you. And I was so surprised by how much the students actually wanted to interact with me. I could go on for hours about it.
When you brought those kids back from Great Britain from this tour, did anything change in your classroom or your relationship with your students? What happened after in terms of the culture around what you teach?
I took students all the way from freshmen through senior level. It was a very diverse group of students. So a lot of those students I did have in my class the next year. I saw they would talk about connections from the trip that they learned when we were learning material in class. For example, when I was talking about those anatomical drawings that were done years ago when we were starting our anatomy unit about looking at some of these historical pieces of anatomy, one of the kids was like, "Oh my gosh, we saw that." And I was like, wow, like what a cool connection to make. Like I got so many more students in HOSA, the Career and Technical Student Organization I also run, because of that trip as well, because they saw that traveling beyond and being a part of something that's bigger than just your normal school day can do so much to enrich your life and your learning. So I was able to actually get a lot more students to become part of that. We also travel through that organization too. So it was very eye-opening, and we are an IB school as well. So having that international component that I can relate my lessons back to is really helpful. Building those relationships with students. I'm having kids come in and just want to eat lunch with me and show me and go back through the pictures from the trip, or talk about, oh, do you remember that really gross dinner that we had? Because yes, most of the food was wonderful, but there were a couple dinners that some of the kids didn't love. And they're like, do you remember that? I don't think I could ever eat that again.
Because the food's not good. It's because it's different. I think it's good
Different.
for kids to have different experiences in different countries. Yeah.
Exactly. Is it called haggis, I think, in Scotland? So, but yeah, trying like the food is just so different. And I also remember the kids talking about how they felt so much better when they were in Europe because we were eating so much non-processed food. They came back changed. I mean, there were a couple students that barely spoke a word in class that decided to sign up on that tour, and they came back. I was teaching 3 levels at that time. So it was the 3rd year I had the student, and the student had never said maybe 10 words to me before. And after we went on that trip, he just hit it off with me and telling me all about his weekends and about his baseball games and about how he wants to travel the world now and about how I inspired him. So moments like that were just so incredible and so touching that it's worth it all.
And, Angela, all this resonates with me because I've traveled with kids, and this is exactly why we travel with kids. It changes everything about the relationship. It changes how even kids who don't go on the trip view our subject and view the culture of our class because we've made it real world. Now, you took another trip. You went to Belize. So tell us, what was the purpose of that trip and what did your students experience and do? What are some of the stories you have there?
So very different. EF offers a very diverse menu of trips, and I wanted to do a STEM trip that was more centered around conservation. So we decided on Belize from Ridge to Reef. And this one was super fun. I knew most of the kids that were on this tour. I had most of them in class before. They were mostly upperclassmen. So I had a pretty strong relationship with them already, which made it really, really fun. But it was a different type of kid, a different type of student that wanted to go on this tour rather than going to Europe because it was a very different type of trip. So it was Belize from Ridge to Reef. It was so funny. We landed, and I remember our tour director, he was amazing. He was this Belizean, just full of energy. And he comes and he picks up our group and he's like, okay, we're going to the zoo right now. And the kids are like, wait, what? I'm still in my clothes like from the plane. He's like, no, we're going to make the most out of this experience. Like we're going to do everything we can. So we went to the zoo there, which is very different than zoos here. It's all about saving animals, restoring their lives and in natural habitats. So that was like the first experience, and it happened within 20 minutes of us being on the bus. It was absolutely insane. And then Belize was the ridge part. So the ridge part was in the mountains, and the kids got to experience so much. But one of my favorite memories was we got to do this bat workshop in the middle of the night. So they take you hiking. Basically, this NGO, I can't remember the name of it exactly, but they took us and we did a bunch of activities during the day, a bunch of science related activities. Like we looked at some ecology and we looked at some of the different plants and botany and everything. But then that night we did a bat workshop and they showed us how they do studies on bats. They catch them and very slowly untangle these nets. Even though we're all so hot and sweaty and tired at this point, the kids were just in awe with this, getting to see this bat up close. I mean, we were like 10 feet away from it. And they're explaining all of the anatomy about the bats, about how the bats are all so different from one another. So that was definitely like one of the highlights, I would say. Another one was definitely zip lining through the rainforest. That was really cool. One of the longest zip lines there are. That trip was more for kind of like the adventurous kid, for the kid that likes to get their hands dirty. Definitely a very different type of trip. And I guess some advice I would like to give to teachers thinking of traveling is make sure kids know what they're getting into, because Belize from Ridge to Reef, exactly as it said, Ridge to Reef. So 3 days were in the mountains, 4 days were in the ocean. So the kids kept asking, when are we going to the ocean? When are we going to the ocean? And we're like, we'll get there, but it's from Ridge to Reef. And they're like, we thought we'd be hanging out at the beach the whole time. And so just like really setting students up with the expectation for the trip and what it's going to be like, I think is super important versus like going on the health sciences in Great Britain. You need to be ready to walk miles a day. Like you need to be ready to walk 5, 6, 7 miles, like, and be able to handle it and not complain. And very different types of trips. And one of my other favorite memories of Belize is we got to go on a boat tour. The boat tour was so eye-opening. I don't teach any of those science courses such as the biology or ecology or earth science, but the kids were making connections when we were on that boat tour to their other classes, which was so cool. They were like, oh my gosh, I remember learning in Mr. Blabla's class that this type of tree is unique to places that are an island. And saying all these facts and connecting it to what they were learning in other classes as well was so cool. I went on this boat trip. We got to go snorkeling, learn all the different species of fish, and just get to be immersed in Belize. And that tour director, I will say, was so life-changing for so many students because he told his life story of being born in Belize. And when we were on the bus, he would always be telling a story. And the kids were like, does this guy ever be quiet? And I'm like, no, he's telling us this story. And they just started to eat it up, telling us stories about how people build their houses from the ground up and somebody else doesn't build it. They build it as a family, and about how different the culture is there. And I remember him having the bus pull over and get some fresh fruit for us. And he got us a bunch of mangoes and just cut the mangoes up and gave them to the kids. And the kids were like, oh my gosh, this is so fresh. I've never had fruit like this in my life. Like, this is so good. Just getting in, the tour director always said, I want you to taste Belize. I want you to feel Belize. And I want you to experience Belize and then bring that learning back to your classroom. So many amazing memories from that trip as well. We did some beach cleanup too, talked about microplastic, making some really like the kids felt like they were impacting the world, which we were. We were truly having an impact on the world. And my absolute favorite thing that came from that is one of the students that went on that trip is actually going to work at the NGO this summer that we did the bat workshop at. He just told me that last week. And I was like, good for you. How cool. So not just classroom connections, but connections like beyond that for life and beyond. He could end up working there. That was really an amazing trip. I love that one as well. Both of them for very different reasons, but I loved both the tours I've been on and just seeing the kids opening their eyes up to the world.
So as you look at what's next for you and your students, how do you go about making that choice?
I like to get student interest, so I'll give out a survey and ask kids if they're interested in traveling, where would they like to travel to. That seems to help with our enrollment numbers. I want to see where the kids want to go, obviously. So there's some trips I would really like to do, but a lot of the kids really want to go to Europe is what I've noticed. But then once we came back from Belize and the kids were hearing the stories about Belize, they were like, can you do Belize again then in a couple of years, please? So what's next? I'm actually chaperoning a trip this summer on the Mediterranean coast in Swiss Alps with another EF tour, chaperoning that one. And then I'm doing health sciences in Great Britain again, not this summer, but next summer because it was such a hit.
Wow, that is great. Angela, is this something that somebody who doesn't really have a lot of experience traveling with kids can do?
Yes. My biggest piece of advice would be, though, to make sure that you are going with some sort of travel company, travel agent, travel group. There's a lot of them out there. EF is our flagship for our school. So we all use EF, and we have a travel program actually at our school. So we have a lot of different trips that are going on, and we try to go to lots of different areas of the world, which is really cool. But definitely having somebody that can help with the organization and the planning, because we're so busy as teachers, as you all know, we have no time. It's like EF makes it so easy. They make my flyers, they make my PowerPoints, they make everything for me. And then it's just ready to go for my promotion nights. They will give me everything. They give you deadlines, a website to help kids raise money. Having some sort of company to help you is essential, I would say, especially also with when you get to your destination, especially if you're traveling across the world. So having that tour director that has that knowledge, and having all the hotels ready for you, and having all the meals ready, or if kids are going to go explore and have lunch on their own that day, is suggesting a few different restaurants that they can go to. So making it doable for the teacher with our workload, I will say that it definitely can be done. I was very nervous at first, but now I'm not going to stop.
So Angela Cannava, a high school science and career technical education teacher in Denver, been doing that for 19 years. And she also works with the future health professionals. Thank you for coming on the show and telling us your story of traveling with kids. I just love these stories, and they kind of really fit with my experiences. And I planned a lot of my trips myself. I wish I had used EF Tours now, but thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
If you're a STEM teacher like me, you want your students to see how STEM impacts the real world, not just read about it. On an EF Explore America STEM tour, they might code robots with mass robotics at MIT, explore marine ecosystems in Florida's coral reefs, or even sit down with a former spy in Washington, D.C. to discover how STEM thinking shows up where you least expect it. Every itinerary is designed by experts to amplify what you teach through hands-on experiences that can't be replicated in the classroom. Visit efexploreamerica.com/STEM and see what an EF Explore American STEM tour can do for your students. Some of the greatest things I've ever done with my students have been tours. They make it all easy for you. So again, check out efexploreamerica.com/STEM. Thanks for tuning in to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. Watch the video version of this podcast and catch my new radio and TV show, Cool Cat Teacher Talk, on YouTube and a radio or TV station near you. Join my Cool Cat Teacher Classroom Matters newsletter at coolcatteacher.com/newsletter. Leave a review if you found this helpful. See you later, educator.